The Iron Cradle. The night the stars fell, the forest grew quiet. In the snow-draped woods of old Earth, deep in the shadowed ranges of what was once Eastern Europe, something unnatural tore across the sky. A ball of fire streaked overhead and crashed into the frozen soil, sending birds screaming from trees and wolves retreating into the dark. The impact rocked the forest floor, throwing up a plume of ash, fire, and bone-white frost. Within the crater, a battered escape pod hissed and cracked open. Metal plates peeled back like broken eggshells. Inside, wrapped in flame-resistant cloth, a child wailed. Something ancient heard the cry. From deep between the trees, where sunlight never touched and the air always smelled of root and rot, the hut moved. Chicken legs the size of tree trunks creaked into motion, and the infamous dwelling of Baba Yaga walked toward the crater, leaving clawed footprints in the snow. The door swung open with a groan. A shadow leaned out, a hunched woman in a shawl of feathers, bones braided into her hair like trophies. She sniffed the air. "Ah," she rasped. "Something new." Baba Yaga stepped down from her hut, not using stairs but drifting, barely disturbing the snow beneath her. Her fingers, gnarled and long, reached into the smoldering pod and plucked the baby out. The child did not cry in her arms. He simply stared at her with wide, cold eyes. The witch muttered. "You're not afraid." She liked that. She named him Alexei and raised him not as a son, but as an apprentice. The forest became his kingdom. He was taught to gather herbs by moonlight, to read the stars for signs, to carve sigils into bark and bone. Where normal children learn to walk, he learned to run barefoot through snow without leaving a trace. While others studied math, he learned how to outwit trickster spirits and speak to wolves. At night, Baba Yaga told him stories, not fairy tales but warnings. She taught him of the old gods buried in Earth's soil and the monsters that humans had forgotten. "Listen well, child," she would whisper beside the hearth, her mortar and pestle grinding bones to powder. "One day, the sky will open, not with angels. With them." She never said who they were, but her eyes flicked toward the stars with an ancient hatred. "And what will I do when they come?" Alexei once asked. "You will not run," she said. "You will make them regret coming." Years passed. The boy grew into a man, tall and sharp-eyed. He wore armor stitched from the hides of things no longer found in natural history. His tools were neither fully of magic nor machine. He forged weapons from scraps of lost human technology, binding them with runes of binding and blood. He could bring down drones with a whisper, see through the eyes of his raven scouts, and vanish into the wind before any enemy could mark his path. He fought not for love, nor peace, nor empire, only for readiness. Because Baba Yaga had warned him, Earth would not be left alone forever. It was rich in what others wanted: resources, location, genetic diversity. The predators among the stars would come eventually, and when they did, they would look upon Earth and see a backwater world, a soft people, a vulnerable prize. They would be wrong. Alexei knew how to kill ghosts. He could twist fear like a knife. He was not raised with lullabies, but with war songs sung by witches. One night, near his 19th winter, the stars shifted again. Baba Yaga watched them burn across the sky, her old eyes narrowing. She stirred her cauldron and saw shapes forming. Metal beasts, ships with spines like knives, millions of lives behind cold, alien eyes. "They come," she murmured. Alexei stood beside her. "Then I go." She looked at him, not as a mother looks at a son, but as a creator watches her greatest weapon take shape. "You were not born of Earth's soil," she said, "but you are its vengeance." Alexei picked up his axe. Its edge gleamed with circuitry and curses. The ravens circled above, their cries echoing like drums. He walked from the hut that had raised him without looking back, and in the dark woods of Earth, the trees whispered. The war has begun. First contact, final warning. The first Zoryn ship arrived in silence. It appeared above Mars without announcement, slipping through space like a dagger through cloth. No warning, no fanfare, just a shadow that stretched across the red deserts like an executioner's blade. Earth's governments scrambled to respond. Diplomatic channels lit up, defense systems engaged, and satellites turned their lenses toward the invader. But there was no message, no envoy, only silence. The Zoryn Imperium had already evaluated humanity and found it lacking. To them, Earth was a resource, a node, a stone to be crushed under the heel of progress. But Earth had Alexei Volkov. He returned not as a whisper in the woods, but as a storm. The United Earth Defense Coalition, rushed together by terrified nations, barely understood what they had summoned when they offered him command. He arrived at the orbital station wearing armor stitched with black feathers and old tech. He spoke little. His eyes held 1,000 winters. The other commanders, uniformed, polished, and surrounded by strategy AIs, whispered behind closed doors. He's not even fully credentialed. His file's been redacted since childhood. He keeps ravens on board his ship. He's a superstitious relic. This is a modern war. But their objections died when he won. The Zoryn's first attack came swiftly, a calculated test strike against Vega 9, a young colony rich in lithium fields and water reserves. Earth scrambled to send reinforcements. The fleet was days out. Vega 9 had hours. Alexei arrived with one vessel. HFY, an aging carrier retrofitted with scavenged alien parts and systems that made engineers nervous. The military broadcast assumed it would be a massacre. It wasn't. Instead of meeting the Zoryn in direct battle, Alexei used sensor-masking drones and plasma mirror relays to craft a phantom fleet, a perfect illusion of Earth's full armada. Zoryn warships opened fire, unleashing the first wave. They hit nothing. Alexei led the real strike from behind asteroid cover, where his troops launched boarding pods lined with electromagnetic, cloaking, and hull-slicing nanoworms. The Zoryn flagship suffered complete internal failure within 8 minutes. Cameras caught one final glimpse of its command chamber, a mass of alien officers tearing at their own skin, screaming at invisible things. They never made a second pass. After the victory, Earth cheered. For the first time, the people believed they might survive. But those who knew war were uneasy. General Hassan, a career tactician from the coalition, met with Alexei aboard HFY. What you did wasn't strategy, Hassan said. It was something else. Alexei didn't respond. He simply fed a bit of dried meat to the raven perched on his shoulder. You predicted their behavior too precisely, Hassan pressed. You knew they'd fire at the illusion. You knew they wouldn't scan twice. I didn't predict, Alexei said softly. I listened. They reek of arrogance. Pride is always hungry. Hassan frowned. We don't fight with folklore. We fight with algorithms and physics. Alexei turned, his gaze ice-cold. Then you'll lose. Word of the defeat reached the Zoryn Imperium faster than any transmission. Their war mind, Krytel, speaker of absolute logic, analyzed the footage. There was no error in their approach. Their scans had detected 30 Earth vessels. Their enemies should have been overwhelmed. Instead, they found fear, hallucinations, mental breakdowns, a weaponized superstition, Krytel whispered, a virus of perception. Impossible. He replayed the image of the human commander again, the one who walked through battlefields untouched, whose soldiers fought with bone-tattooed rifles and primitive chants. Find him, the speaker ordered. Dissect him. Back on Earth, politicians demanded Alexei explain his methods. Was it mind control? Psychological warfare? Alien tech? Alexei stood before them in silence, his breath fogging in the too-warm room. One of his ravens landed on the podium. I was raised to fight what men cannot see, he said. And what's coming will not bleed for your bullets alone. They scoffed. They called him unstable, primitive. But in the corners of the galaxy, the Zoryn began to whisper, not of Earth, not of its armies, but a man whose name meant nothing to the stars, but whose eyes reminded them of something they had long since forgotten. Fear, war of bone and steel. War spread like mold across the stars. The Zoryn Imperium, once calculating and methodical, turned feral in its campaign against Earth. Their pride had been wounded by a world they dismissed as backwater. Now, they sought not conquest, but correction, a swift, brutal demonstration of power. They would burn Earth to the core. But Alexei Volkov was already 3 moves ahead. While coalition leaders argued in orbital chambers, Alexei fought a different war, one of whispers, shadows, and blood. His soldiers called themselves the Black Root Division, an elite unit made from volunteers and those too broken for conventional command. They were reconditioned, rearmed, and rewoven. Alexei taught them to fight with more than rifles. Each soldier carried relics, bone pendants, storm-etched blades, skin-marked sigils that flickered under enemy scans. Their armor was reinforced with carved steel etched with folklore and reinforced circuits. They feared nothing, and when they died, some returned. I trained them as Baba Yaga trained me. Alexei told his second-in-command, a silent woman known only as Mara, to make death wonder whether it was too soon. The turning point came at Trinar 4, a once verdant forest world now reduced to cinders and black ash. Zoryn terraformers had scorched the surface, preparing it for strip mining. They expected resistance from above, ships, missiles, orbital bombardments. Instead, they heard drums in the trees. When the Zoryn scouts entered the deadwoods, their equipment malfunctioned. HUDs blinked out. Comms went silent. Static whispered old Earth lullabies in their headsets. Some saw children standing in the distance, pointing. Others screamed and fired at shadows. The humans attacked with precision, using terrain, fear, and trickery. Nets made of woven thorns dragged Zoryn captains into pits. Mines didn't explode. They howled, sending shockwaves of panic through enemy squads. Alexei moved through the battlefield like mist. No one saw him kill. They only found the aftermath, bodies arranged in spirals, symbols carved into scorched armor, weapons turned to ash. Back aboard the Kashii, Mara debriefed their success. Minimal casualties. 3 squads extracted the Zoryn war engine core intact. 1 prisoner captured. Good, Alexei said, kneeling by a small fire in the ship's center. A strange habit, even in vacuum-regulated quarters. The prisoner will speak. He hasn't said a word, she replied. Genetically enhanced. Fearless. Alexei removed a small sack from his belt and pulled out something crude. A child's carved doll, its eyes painted red. Put this in his cell. Lock the door. Come back an hour. Mara returned 70 minutes later. The Zoryn prisoner had torn out his own eyes and was whispering a name in his native tongue. Ghost Mother's Hand. Ghost Mother's Hand. News of Trinar 4 traveled fast. Zoryn High Command issued orders to eliminate Alexei at all costs. Bounty fleets were dispatched. They offered cybernetic augmentation to any who could bring back his head. But fear is a virus, and Alexei had already infected the hive. Zoryn ships began requesting route reassignments when they heard Kashii was nearby. Units mutinied rather than enter haunted sectors. Some refused to even say his name, referring to him only as the Grave Walker. Krytel, the speaker of logic, attempted to reassert control. This is not magic, he said to his command circle. This is cognitive warfare. A trick. Superstition cannot destroy an empire. But deep inside his cold, data-filled mind, doubt took root. Back on Earth, Alexei's own people began to change. Blackroot soldiers no longer flinched at orbital strikes. Some had dreams days before battles and awoke knowing the outcomes. A few spoke to the dead. One whispered a warning about a fleet 2 weeks before it arrived, and she was right. Mara confronted Alexei. What are we becoming? He stared out the ship's viewport, eyes reflecting the stars. Survivors. No, she said. Something else. You've opened something. Alexei didn't deny it. I was not raised by men, he said. I was raised by something old. I'm not building an army. I'm building a curse. Aboard a distant Zoryn dreadnought, the Emperor himself, Velzaker, watched a replay of Trinar 4. He froze the screen on Alexei's figure, framed in fire and shadow. Send me his file, the Emperor ordered. But we have no data, the tactician replied. Just a single line. The screen flickered and displayed the coalition record. Volkov, Alexei. Status, classified. Raised by entity, Baba Yaga. Recommendation, Do not engage alone. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. This war will not be won with strength alone. The witch is there. The sky above Earth rippled with fire. The final Zoryn fleet had arrived, an armada of over 500 ships, bristling with singularity lances, planetary burrowers, and memory scramblers. The Imperium had lost patience. It would not conquer Earth. It would erase it. Cities were evacuated. Orbitals emptied. Every defense satellite was armed, primed, and pointed skyward. And still, Earth's generals feared it wouldn't be enough. Except one. Alexei Volkov stood in the ruins of old Kiev, cloak sweeping through ash, runes glowing faintly at his wrists. The wind howled through broken towers. Ravens perched on satellite dishes, watching. "They're here," said Mara, her voice taut with tension. Alexei didn't respond immediately. He knelt, placing his hand on the ground, fingers splayed across cracked concrete and frozen soil. "I know," he whispered. "The forest told me." In the Zoryn command vessel, Emperor Velzaker observed Earth through a wide, glassy viewport. "Target their command centers," he growled. "Begin with orbital cleansing. No survivors." But as the order transmitted, every screen aboard the Zoryn fleet flickered. Darkness, then static, then a voice, old, ragged, and feminine. "I warned you." The screens cleared. For a heartbeat, every Zoryn ship saw the same image. A crooked hut on giant chicken legs, silhouetted by fire. And beside it, a boy grown to a man, clad in iron, crowned in shadow. Then everything went wrong. Alexei's final plan had never been about numbers. It was about myth. Across Earth's crust, he had embedded talismans, coded rituals encoded into satellites, sensors, and old transmission towers. Tech merged with enchantment, fear-bound with data. The Earth became a spell circle, and the fleet above stepped straight into the trap. As the Zoryn fired their first volley, nothing happened. Their weapons vanished mid-flight. Some turned around. Others struck phantom targets. Illusions crafted from thousands of satellite relays, each beaming impossible coordinates, echoes of enemies that weren't there. Their AI targeting systems began reporting paradoxes. Gravity displacement negative. Target is dream. Command invalid. Entity not real. Then the black root struck. Not from space. From within. Alexei had seeded the Zoryn ships with infiltrators weeks ago. Soldiers who wore charm-etched armor and moved like ghosts through bulkheads. They weren't armed with heavy weapons. They brought poison, whispers, and fire. Whole squadrons died, screaming in their native tongue. "The witch walks. The witch walks." Mara led the frontal charge from Earth's upper stratosphere in modified drop pods shaped like coffins. As her team breached the Zoryn dreadnought, she spoke through the intercom. "By root and ash, by storm and bone, we are the curse you summoned." They hit the hull like a hammer. At the core of the battle, Alexei did what no commander had ever dared. He left the safety of command and boarded the enemy's throne ship alone. He walked the halls of the Zoryn command vessel without resistance. Doors opened for him. Lights dimmed. The ship itself seemed to fear him. He entered the throne room, where Velzaker waited, sword of star-forged matter in hand. "I've faced worlds stronger than yours," the Emperor said. "Why do you think you'll win?" Alexei's eyes glowed faintly. He reached into a pouch and pulled out a bundle wrapped in aged cloth. He tossed it forward. It unwrapped mid-air. A skull, scorched black, marked with runes that pulsed with fire. "The first Zoryn to touch Earth," Alexei said. "Baba Yaga kept his soul." The Emperor faltered. "You think you're special?" Velzaker spat. "Just a savage with toys and spells." "I'm not special," Alexei replied. "I'm her heir." He raised his hand. The skull ignited, and the ship screamed. From orbit, Earth's defenders watched as the flagship fractured inward, not from explosion, but collapse, as though something inside it had been unmade. The remaining Zoryn ships panicked. Some fled, others fired blindly. A few began fighting each other, overcome by fear and hallucination. The Black Root didn't pursue. They simply watched. The battle was over in less than an hour. In the aftermath, Earth was silent. The skies cleared. Alexei returned to the woods where he was raised. The Kashii landed in a glade thick with mist and silence. The old hut stood waiting, chicken legs folded, chimney smoking lazily. Mara walked beside him. She knew this would happen. She did. Alexei nodded. Was this revenge? No, he said. It was a reminder. They stood in silence. Will they come back? She asked. Alexei looked up at the stars. They'll remember her, he said, and what she made. He stepped into the hut. The door closed behind him. And somewhere in the deep dark of the galaxy, the Imperium added a new rule to their war doctrines. Do not invade Earth. It belongs to the witch's son.